Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's weekly Forex forecast for the 6th of November to the 10th of November 2017. I hope you're all having a great weekend, and as always what we're going to do is we're going to start with the US dollar index and oil before running through a number of currency pairs, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process, as well as highlighting some of the targets in those pairs that we're looking for in the coming week and weeks ahead. A quick thank you to all of you who like and share these videos on a regular basis and who comment on these videos on a regular basis. We appreciate the really good feedback you guys have shown us in the emails and everything. So without further ado, let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. Starting with the US dollar index, as we do every week, you can see last week we were looking for a correction, having broken through the key area of resistance at the 94.030. We were looking for a correction back into this area to test this area of support before further advances to the upside in the dollar index. And as you can see, we did get that price action taking place last week. However, we haven't achieved the target of the 95.270 set out from last week. So what that means is we go into next week looking for further advances in the dollar index and a completion of the target of the 95.270. Now, when we hit this target, we could get a bit of a pullback as people start to take profits and maybe some shorts coming into the market. However, we are ultimately looking for a continuation of the major trend to the upside. So we are ultimately looking for a break at some point, a correction before a move up to the next major area of resistance in the dollar index at the 96.695. Next, we're going to have a look at oil. Now, oil performed really nicely last week, taking out both targets we had to the upside. And as you can see, this uptrend is still intact. And we do have a trend line here going on as well, denoted from these two low points over here. Now, next week, we are looking for further advances in oil. We're just simply looking for a continuation of this current uptrend. But what we first of all need is a correction to take place, possibly a deeper correction down into the channel. However, because this is fairly strong uptrend here, we may only get a pullback into around the 55 area over here. But either way, we want to see a correction before we start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at taking longs up towards the first target of the 56.86. And if we get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the secondary target and a slightly longer term target of the 58.79 in oil. So the first pair we're going to look at is the Euro US dollar. Now, having had this big sell-off up from the 1.18363 area of resistance up here, we pretty much spent all week correcting, and at the end of the week we found resistance at key area of resistance here at the 1.16720. And we had a sell-off from this key area of resistance last week on the back of the NFP data that came out. So going into next week, very simply, we're looking for a continuation of this pattern to the downside, known as a bear flag. And we're looking for a correction to take place before we start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking for those bearish formations and patterns to short this pair down towards the target and the next key area of support at the 1.14932. The next pair we're going to look at is the pound dollar. Now, last week we had a big sell-off after the Bank of England interest rate decision and press conference from the key area of resistance at the 1.32696. As a result, we're looking for further declines in the pound US dollar going into next week. And what we're looking for is a correction to take place, having broken the key area of support at the 1.3155, possibly retesting this as resistance. And if we get this kind of price action taking place, we're going to be looking for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking to short this pair down towards the first target and the first key area of support, which has just been missed over here at the 1.30342. And we're going to be looking for a break through this area and also further declines down towards the secondary target we have here at the 1.29799, which is the next key area of support in the pound US dollar. The next pair we're going to look at is the US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we were looking for a pullback into the key area of broken resistance turning support at the 113.186, which as you can see we did get that pullback. And we were looking up towards the target of the 114.487, and we came just shy of this target before the close of the markets last week. So going into next week, we are looking for further advances in the US dollar, and we are looking for a completion of this target. And this is going to be an area for anybody managing this trade to the upside to see as well if we can get this break through here and possibly the break through the resistance in the dollar index. And if we get that break to the upside, we're going to be looking for further advances in the dollar index to the secondary target and the next key area of resistance to the upside at the 115.485. The next pair we're going to look at is the Aussie US dollar. Now last week we started with the Aussie US dollar down in this area over here, and we said we were looking for a correction back towards the key area of broken support, possibly becoming resistance at 0.77482. And we said we were going to look for shorts down towards these targets and the next key areas of support to the downside in this pair. Now we did get that correction take place and we did start to see those shorts come in, but we didn't accomplish the target set out for last week. So anybody managing these trades to the downside, going into next week, we are looking for a further correction, and as you can see, potentially have a counter trend line break here. And we're going to be looking for a correction to take place before looking for possible secondary entries and shorts down towards the next key areas of support to the downside and the targets at the 0.76156 and the second target at the 0.75817. The next pair we're going to look at is the New Zealand US dollar. Now after this big sell-off to the downside off of the back of a government being formed a few weeks in fact after the New Zealand general election, we did accomplish the targets that we had to the downside at the 0.68217 and also the 0.68640, and we started last week around this kind of area. And although we were looking for an overall continuation of this downtrend, we did highlight that we were likely in store for a pullback up towards the key area of broken support turning resistance at the 0.6953, and that this would be a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we go into next week sitting at this key area of resistance. So if we get a bit of a correction, possibly even one more test of this area of resistance, we're going to start looking for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at shorting, first of all, down towards the two previous targets to the downside here. These would be considered management points to the downside. However, we are ultimately looking for a break through these areas and a continuation of the overall downtrend towards the next key area of support and the first target at the 0.67726 and the second target and the next key area of support to the downside at the 0.66791. Now, just a couple of things before we move on with the New Zealand US dollar. Just bear in mind that this is such a big move to the downside. We do run the risk of going into a bit of a range with this kind of price action. So this is something we need to consider if we're trading this and looking for these moves to the downside. And we also have to bear in mind that next week we have an interest rate decision coming out of New Zealand as we do Australia. And we know that interest rate decisions can cause huge and often do cause huge volatility in the markets. So a few things to bear in mind specifically with the New Zealand US dollar next week. The next pair we're going to look at is the US dollar Swissy. Now, as you can see, last week we had a bit of a correction taking place and we didn't get a huge amount of movement, to be honest with you, in the US dollar franc last week. So this week we are looking potentially for a slight correction to take place first before initiating longs up towards the first target here at the 1.00774. And if we get those bullish formations and patterns appearing in the US dollar franc and we initiate those longs up towards this first target, we're going to also be looking for a potential break of this target. And if we get a break of this first target here, we're going to be looking up towards a secondary target and the next key area of resistance to the upside in the dollar franc at the 1.01653. Now, if we start to get a push up in the dollar index and also a break of resistance in the dollar index, we can expect further advances potentially beyond the first target in the US dollar franc. The next pair we're going to look at is the US dollar CAD. Now, last week we were looking for a pullback and a move back down to retest the broken area of resistance turning support at the 1.27730. Now we are testing this area of support fairly deeply, so what we're looking for next week is a push to the upside. And if we get a break back above this key area of support at the 1.27730 and we start trading above this area, we're going to be looking for bullish formations and patterns to form. And we're going to be looking at taking those patterns long up towards the target and the next key area of resistance to the upside at the 1.29973. The next pair we're going to look at is the pound Swiss franc. Now last week again we had this capitulation off of the back of the Bank of England data, and we are looking for further declines going into next week in the pound. So what we'd like to see in the pound, having broken through key area of support at the 1.31809, is a correction to take place and possibly a retest of broken support becoming resistance. And if we get that kind of price action, we're going to be looking for bearish formations and patterns. And this is a great place to look to take those bearish formations and patterns short down towards the first target and next key area of support to the downside at the 1.29883. And then secondly, also down towards the second target and the key area of support to the downside at the 1.28748. The next pair we're going to look at is the British pound Japanese yen, and keeping in line with the theme of potentially further declines in the pound next week, we are looking for a pullback to broken support in the pound yen. And if we get a correction and a pullback and a retest of broken support becoming resistance, and we do need a correction in this pair because as you can see there's only little room here really towards the first target, so even just purely for risk to reward reasons, we'd like to see this correction take place first. And then we're going to be looking, if we get this price action, if we get this setup taking place, we're going to be looking for bearish formations and patterns to form in this area. And we're going to be looking at taking those short, first of all down towards the first target, which we came close to down here at the 148.473. And then we're going to be looking for the secondary target, if we can get a breakthrough here to the downside, next key area of support on this pair at the 147.788. And the final pair we're going to look at this week, and again keeping in line with our theme of further declines in the British pound, is the pound CAD. Now last week we broke back below key area of resistance, which failed to support at the 1.69804. And we also broke down below key area of support over here, tested numerous times in the past here and also over to the left over here off the charts. So if we go into next week and we get that pullback and a retest of broken support becoming resistance, you can see it tested it here, but it'd be nice to see it tested again. And this is going to be a fantastic area to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at taking those patterns short down towards the target and the next key area of support to the downside at the 1.64165. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. Don't forget that we have interest rate decisions coming out of Australia and New Zealand next week, and so bear in mind that this will cause some probably major volatility in those respective markets. A quick and final thank you to all of you who like and share these videos on a regular basis and to comment in the comment section as well. You know that I appreciate all of you who do that, and also to those of you who have already subscribed. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. The only thing left to say is take care and don't forget to trade safely.